The late summer sun beamed down on the town's main thoroughfare, lighting up the lively scene of volunteers gathered to transform dull walls into vibrant canvases. The newly launched Community Color Initiative was bringing together local residents, all eager to leave a permanent mark on the beloved streets they called home. Among the crowd stood Serena, a painter, known for the gentle brushstrokes and pastel shades that dominated her gallery pieces. She had volunteered her time and talent to create a mural on the fire station's side wall, an abstract tribute to courage, service, and unity. She loved that this project would allow her to give back, but she privately cherished the chance to work outdoors, capturing the swirl of real people in the real world, letting life's unpredictability shape her art. As she sorted her boxes of bright acrylic paints, a figure in a modest gray t-shirt and well-worn jeans walked over. Mateo, a volunteer firefighter, offered a friendly nod. He was there to supervise a portion of the mural that was meant to highlight his station's emblem. At a glance, one might miss his wiry strength beneath his unassuming exterior, but the gentle confidence in his posture instantly drew Serena's attention. His short chestnut brown hair threatened to curl at the edges in the summer humidity, and a dusting of soot stained his heavy boots, testaments to his time spent battling small brush fires on the outskirts of town. They exchanged a few words, polite smiles framing each syllable, then went their own ways, each preoccupied with the tasks of the day. Yet the memory of that first meeting lingered. While Serena outlined shapes on the wall, she found herself stealing glances at Mateo. There was something about him that disarmed her. Maybe it was his easy laughter when he joked with a group of teenagers helping prime a section of brick, or the way he offered quick, efficient assistance to anyone who appeared to struggle with a ladder or paint bucket. As the day wore on, clouds slowly gathered overhead, and a breeze lifted the drop cloth from beneath her feet. She stood on tiptoe to pin it back, only to see Mateo approach again, this time with a staple gun in hand. His face radiated warmth as he secured the cloth, preventing it from flapping away in the rising wind. With a soft grin, he introduced himself properly. She offered her own name and explained her painting concept, an abstract of fiery reds and oranges to represent bravery, blended with calming blues to symbolize the sense of unity in the face of danger. His eyes lit up, and he lingered for a moment, admiring her outline. He seemed particularly drawn to one section of the mural, where an arc of gold intersected a swirling ocean of teal. Serena teased him for being so captivated, and he responded by gently touching the unfinished paint with a fingertip, leaving a small smudge. She laughed at his wide-eyed reaction, reassuring him she could always paint over it. In that instant, something subtle but undeniable passed between them, a comfortable lightness that felt akin to stepping into a favorite pair of shoes. Neither had more time to speak, though, as the demands of the mural and station duties pulled them momentarily apart. Still, the shared glances offered a promise of more conversation to come. Over the next week, the courtyard around the fire station bustled with activity. Students, families, and local artists were all working under the guidance of a small leadership team, which included Serena. She wore sturdy carpenter pants flecked with rainbow splatters of dried paint. She had pinned her hair into a messy knot, leaving a few stray wisps to tickle her forehead. While the mural took shape, a gentle camaraderie hovered in the air. People chatted about weekend plans, favorite restaurants in town, and memories of old times. Many folks recognized Mateo as the first person who'd show up to help if someone's cat got stuck in a tree, or if a neighbor's porch lamp tripped the breaker. He was a dependable presence, always ready to lend a helping hand. On the second morning of Mural Week, Serena arrived early to sketch the final outlines for the main design. She found Mateo, surprisingly, already there, clearing away a pile of fallen branches that had gathered after a gusty overnight wind. He offered her a bright smile, and impulsively she invited him to join her for coffee after the day's work. His expression shifted from polite warmth to genuine pleasure, and he accepted without hesitation. At the end of the shift, when the sun dipped low, they walked to a nearby cafe with plastic cups of iced coffee in hand. They sat on a small bench outside, the hum of traffic a gentle background music. Conversation flowed easily. Serena learned about Matteo's background. He'd been a volunteer firefighter for 3 years, balancing his shifts with a job at a small auto repair shop. Firefighting, he confided, was his true calling. Though it wasn't his full time career, he found the station's camaraderie incredibly life giving. Serena, in turn, told him about how she'd grown up doodling on every scrap of paper she could find. She had pursued professional training in art, but her favorite approach remained spontaneous and intuitive. She found painting to be a form of storytelling, taking the swirling chaos of emotions and shaping them into color and shape. Matteo listened intently, encouraging her with thoughtful questions. Even the cafe's neon lights seemed to glow brighter as the two discovered points of shared interest. Both had an unspoken love for sweet pastries, and each favored the hush of early mornings over late nights. By the time they parted ways that evening, an unspoken understanding had formed. There was no dramatic declaration or pressing sense of urgency, just the comfortable knowledge that they enjoyed each other's company and saw in each other an ember of real connection. As Serena drove home, she caught herself smiling at every red light, replaying Matteo's gentle laugh in her mind. Meanwhile, in his small rented apartment across town, Matteo found himself running a mental reel of Serena's animated expressions while painting, her hair escaping its knot in unruly curls. For the next few days, both of them carried an extra spark of energy, as though the promise of each other's presence quickened their pulses. The mural progressed beautifully. By midweek, large swaths of color had turned a once plain brick wall into a kaleidoscope. As Serena painted, groups of onlookers would pause to admire the work, sometimes offering praise or snapping pictures on their phones. Local newspapers carried small features about the project. Serena's name popped up in one article, accompanied by a photograph of her perched on a ladder, paintbrush in hand. Matteo purchased a copy, underlining the mention of her name with a pen. When he showed it to her with a proud grin, she blushed and pretended it was silly, but inwardly she felt warm. One late afternoon, the air took on a stifling thickness, heavy with humidity that augured a storm. Dark clouds began to roll in, and the volunteer coordinator decided to wrap up early to avoid having the materials damaged by rain. Simone, an older artist helping with the background painting, made an offhand comment that if water got into the cracks of the paint too soon, it could ruin days of meticulous work. Everyone, including Matteo and Serena, scrambled to cover their sections with plastic sheeting, anchoring everything down with bricks, all beneath a mounting sense of urgency. Thunder rumbled ominously. Serena was working on the top edge of the mural, determined to secure the plastic before the first drops fell. She struggled with the weight of the sheet, perched precariously on a short ladder. Just as the wind whipped the tarp from her grip, Matteo appeared below, catching the drifting corner and securing it in place, before scurrying partway up the ladder behind her. Raindrops began to pelt the ground with increasing force. Leaning into the wind, he wrapped one arm around her waist to steady her and used the other hand to staple the sheet to the wooden beam overhead. In that moment, she felt the lean strength in his arm against her lower back, a protective support that coaxed a flutter in her stomach. Rainwater trickled down their necks, soaking their shirts. Lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the wet brick in stark, dramatic light. Then, just as quickly as it started, the downpour began to ease. By the time the pair made it safely inside the station's garage, they were both drenched and laughing. Their eyes met amidst the scattered raindrops, and for a moment, all the clamor of the cooling storm seemed to fade. The station manager, chuckling at their soaked appearance, offered a bundle of dry towels. They toweled off, still giddy with relief and adrenaline. Later that evening, Matteo drove her home, the sky purged of storm clouds and stretching in a stunning pink sunset. When his truck pulled up to her small white bungalow, Serena hesitated before leaving. Summoning courage, she pressed a quick kiss against his cheek. The unexpected softness of her gesture made something bloom in his chest. He wrapped his fingers around hers for a moment, finding it surprisingly natural to say, "Let's see each other tomorrow." She nodded shyly, already feeling her heart flutter again. The next day, the storm had left behind fresh, crisp air. The volunteer painting crew reconvened, lamenting a few water streaks but relieved that most of the mural had remained intact. Work continued, and so did Serena and Mateo's gentle dance around each other, finding small excuses to meet, share a brush, or stand side by side commenting on color choices. The mural itself mirrored their evolving relationship, subtle layers adding depth and texture. The portion representing the flame motif surged with intense reds and yellows, while the cool blues and greens that complemented it formed a soothing counterpoint. The composition began to feel like a reflection of connection, the convergence of fiery spirit and tranquil creativity. When the coordinator declared a break, Mateo strolled over, carrying 2 water bottles. He beckoned Serena to follow him around to the back lot, where old, unused fire equipment was stored. They settled on a sturdy wooden crate. He spoke quietly about his past, how he'd once aspired to be a full-time firefighter but had to assume responsibilities at home after his parents fell ill. That was why he'd taken a stable job at the auto shop, a role that let him volunteer on weekends and evenings rather than train full-time. It wasn't the dream he had once envisioned, but it still gave him purpose. Serena listened, feeling a tender ache for his sacrifice and devotion. She realized how love, the desire to protect and care for those around him, anchored his life's decisions. She in turn confessed her fear of never breaking out of the small town art scene. She worried her style was too quiet and introspective to stand out. She felt a nagging sense of guilt whenever she contemplated leaving the community for opportunities in a bigger city. Here, she had her loved ones, her humble studio, and a well-worn routine. The possibility of stepping away seemed at once thrilling and soul-wrenching. Matteo rested a hand gently on hers, the warmth of his skin renewing the sense of closeness she'd begun to crave. He reminded her that the point of art wasn't necessarily fame or fortune. If her paintings brought color and meaning to people's lives here, he believed that was precious in itself. As the project neared its completion, the coordinator organized a small luau-themed party as a reward for all the volunteers. Tables and chairs were set in the front courtyard of the station, adorned with bright tropical centerpieces. The tantalizing scent of grilled chicken and pineapple wafted over the festivities, while a local band strummed lively music. Vibrant chatter merged with the clink of soda cans. The mural loomed overhead, nearly finished, its bright shapes illuminated by evening lanterns. The entire scene felt festive, but also comforting, like a big family gathering. Serena, wearing a breezy floral dress that revealed the paint-splattered lines of her forearms, scanned the crowd in search of Matteo. She found him talking to an elderly neighbor who had come by to admire the painting. Sensing her approach, Matteo excused himself politely and met her halfway, a grin lighting up his features. They meandered around the party, sampling fruit skewers and greeting other volunteers. A gentle breeze carried the melody of steel drums to their ears. Under the soft glow of paper lanterns, they danced together, initially in playful, swaying steps. Before long, their bodies found a natural rhythm, moving closer, hearts beating in tandem. There was a hush between them. Everyone else melted into the background. Her hands found refuge on his shoulders, his on the curve of her waist, and as they locked eyes, the tender, unspoken question filled the space. Where would this lead? The answer didn't come in words, but in the hush of the moment, in the flush that tinted both their cheeks, in the way his earnest gaze asked permission. This time, rather than a quick peck on the cheek, their lips met in a gentle, lingering kiss. A burst of applause erupted around them, punctuated by laughter and teasing cheers. They broke apart, faces flushed, and joined the crowd's laughter, there, in the middle of the station's courtyard, beneath the glow of lanterns, and next to a half-finished mural. they felt that spark flare into a bright, undeniable flame of possibility. In the following days, the mural finally reached its completion. The swirling composition of shapes and colors came together in a triumphant harmony that captured the spirit of communal cooperation. It was bold yet delicate, an apt reflection of how courage and creativity could coexist. The piece included a stylized phoenix that rose from a wave, a nod to both the red hot bravery of firefighting and the deep, life sustaining presence of water. Small, hidden figures in the background symbolized the unity of the neighborhood. On the final day of painting, a crowd gathered for a concluding ceremony. The fire chief said a few words of thanks, local news reporters snapped pictures, and the volunteer coordinator proudly declared the project a shining success. Matteo and Serena stood side by side, the subtle brush of their shoulders more intimate than any public display. As people began to disperse, the two slipped away to the station's quieter back entrance. They stood there next to the old equipment, sipping from water bottles and stealing glances at each other in the late afternoon sunlight. This time, the hush was filled with a deeper intensity. Their conversation turned from small talk to bigger questions. Did Matteo see himself pursuing firefighting full-time if his circumstances ever changed? Did Serena dream of painting in Paris or New York? The dreams were laid out, tender and uncertain. In truth, neither had answers. What they did have right there was a shared sense of purpose that had grown beyond the mural itself. Matteo put a gentle hand on the side of her face. I want you to keep chasing your art. I want to see it take you wherever it leads, he murmured, his voice low but steady. She looked up, gratitude blazing in her eyes. And I want you to do the same for firefighting, she whispered. I can see how much it means to you. I don't want you to lock that away. He placed his arms around her and she leaned into his chest, feeling the sure, gradual rise and fall of his breathing. She closed her eyes, letting the noise of the street traffic and the voices of lingering volunteers fade into a quiet hum. At that moment, it felt like the calm center of a swirling storm, full of possibility and promise. Days turned into weeks. With the mural complete, the volunteer team disbanded, though scattered friendships continued to thrive. Matteo resumed his schedule, working long days at the auto shop, volunteering evenings or weekends at the station. Serena began work on commission pieces, her reputation quietly rising around town. A gallery owner noticed her mural work and offered to showcase some of her paintings that captured similarly bold color palettes. She found herself splitting time between painting in her bedroom turned studio and meeting clients who wanted custom pieces for their offices or living rooms. Despite the flurry of activity, they both made time for each other. Whether it was a quickly improvised coffee break or late-night stroll after the station placed Matteo on standby for possible calls, their companionship deepened. A new sense of trust and tenderness shaped each visit, each conversation. One crisp afternoon, Serena wandered into Matteo's repair shop, holding a bag of pastries. He'd been crouched beneath the hood of a small sedan, grease staining his forearms. Hearing her voice, he slid out from under the vehicle. The shy smile that lit his face made her heart skip. She handed him a warm pastry stuffed with sweet custard, and they sat on an overturned bucket near the shop's back wall. Between bites, they chatted about an upcoming fundraiser the fire station was hosting, a chili cook-off. He invited her to come, describing it with an enthusiastic grin. Not everyone's chili is equally edible, he joked, but it's for a good cause. She teased him about possibly daring to try her own experimental chili recipe. Knowing her flair for creativity, he only half joked about wearing protective gear. Their banter had a playful, steady comfort. Now and then his hand drifted to hers as he listened, as though to confirm the reality of her presence. That weekend marked the chili cook-off. Long tables lined the fire station's driveway, with steaming crock pots exhaling spicy aromas. Families, local officials, and groups of curious foodies roamed from station to station, sampling chili spoonfuls, rating them on criteria like flavor, texture, and heat. The entire atmosphere hummed with laughter, conversation, and the occasional dramatic cough from someone who'd overestimated their tolerance for spice. Serena arrived mid-afternoon, wearing jeans and a loose, paint-stained shirt she'd cleverly redesigned by sewing patterned fabric onto the sleeves. Her fingers still had flecks of ultramarine blue from a morning spent working on a painting commissioned by a small cafe. She searched the crowd for Matteo, who was stationed at a booth near the back. He waved her over, sporting his volunteer firefighter t-shirt and a chili-stained apron. As always, his easy smile brightened the moment he saw her. She sampled his chili, an earthy mixture with a mild kick, praising its flavor, but gently ribbing him about needing a bit more boldness. Throughout the sunny afternoon, they meandered between booths, sharing spoons and commentary. Eventually, they found a quiet corner near the station's newly painted mural, now a local landmark. They enjoyed the playful rivalry among contestants and decided on their personal favorite. Conversation drifted, as it often did, toward bigger dreams. Would Matteo consider applying for a full-time firefighting position in a neighboring city where the hiring board was rumored to be more flexible? Would Serena take that chance to move her paintings to a wider market? Their gazes flicked between each other's eyes and the mural's arc of gold, as though seeking assurance from the artwork that began it all. Amid the general noise, Matteo brushed his thumb over Serena's cheek and said, "Whatever I end up doing, I just want to see you keep painting. You fill everything with color." His voice held a fervent sincerity. She felt her throat tighten for a second, realizing how deeply she cared for this man, whose daily acts of bravery sprang from a reservoir of kindness. She placed a gentle hand over his chest, feeling the serenade of his heartbeat. "I want to keep painting," she whispered, "and see you blaze forward in your calling. I hope we can find a way to walk side by side, even if it's not a straight road." His reply came in a kiss, unhurried and certain, bringing a momentary hush to the swirl of people around them. The mural stood behind them like a silent blessing, as if the swirls of color had conspired to bring these two souls face to face. Over the next few months, life found its rhythm. Their connection strengthened, supported by evening calls, weekend visits, and occasional text messages sprinkled with inside jokes. The fire station's new mural served as a splendid daily reminder that even in ordinary routines, color, laughter, and companionship could thrive. The project that had begun as a simple volunteer initiative turned into the canvas on which both of them discovered a new vision of love. In time, each carved a path forward. Matteo studied for the entrance exam at the bigger fire department in the next county, spurred by Serena's unwavering faith in his abilities. Serena, for her part, grew bolder in her art, sometimes playing with vivid contrasts she'd once shied away from. She even pooled her savings to secure a small booth at a regional art fair, carrying with her the memory of Matteo cheering her on while she prepared new pieces. Yet, amid their ambitions, they never lost sight of the warmth kindled by the small gestures: a coffee, a shared pastry, a quick hug in the station's driveway. With each new day, the layers of their connection deepened, much like paint gradually layering on canvas to yield a masterpiece. Its hues might not always be perfect, the strokes might not always be as confident as they hoped, but together they found that even the flaws held their beauty. Sometimes, when the sun set and the world seemed quiet, they'd meet at the site of the mural. The municipal lights cast soft shadows on the flames and waved, revealing new shapes in the design, shapes they hadn't noticed before. They'd stand hand in hand, feeling the slow summer breeze or the crisp autumn air, discussing what the future might hold. But then Serena would gaze at Matteo, noticing the glow in his eyes, and Matteo, in turn, would notice the faint smudge of paint near her hairline, as though she carried a subtle emblem of her craft everywhere she went. In those unspoken moments, they felt the security of being exactly where they belonged, side by side, forging a shared story as colorful and vibrant as the wall that first brought them together. And so continued the gentle, insistent pulse of new love, burning bright as a small flame guarded against the wind, painting the everyday with hues of promise and hope.